TTB Music Podcast.
Trying to do the best bit of the podcast now.
It's the best bit, it's a spoiler. It's the best bit of the podcast. It's about 30 years old.
Oh,
Hello, you're back.
we are. And after last month's.
Last month.
Thrilling podcast, we're back
Yeah.
with another high quality
Yeah.
selection of music. Strap yourself in.
Strap yourselves in, kids.
We have the return of the Libertines. They thought it would never happen. Perhaps it shouldn't have bothered, but we'll get to that in a minute. But Anthems for a Doomed Youth, which kind of follows up quite nicely for the Frank Dudar album, which was Songs for Angry People.
Songs for Angry People. Songs for the negative people.
Yeah. And now they have Anthems for a Doomed Youth. It's kind of almost like a follow-on album.
Yeah, it is.
We had the second album from the Homesteadies, Craig Finn, Faith in the Future. We have latest solo album from David Gilmour, Rattle That Lock. Latest solo album from Keith Richards, Crosseyed Heart. We have Dame Funk, Invite the Light.
Dang.
And Duran, Paper Gods. That's one for the lady in the household. Anyway, kicking off.
Okay.
Let's get to the third album from the Libertines. And debut album was 2002, then it followed up in 2004, then it all went a bit tits up for various reasons.
Documented.
And yes, and after a long hiatus, they are back with an album produced by Jake Gosling, who is best known for producing One Direction and Ed Sheeran.
Yeah.
So
You didn't see that coming, did you?
no, Libertines, they're back. Was it worth the wait?
It's all right. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to see a band get back together. We've had it earlier this year with Blur. Although I'm from that generation that probably thinks Blur did a good job.
That's because it did.
Yes, because it did. This album is it's not a return to form, but then again, how can you ever return to that form? You know, here we are 10, 12 years later. A lot of water has passed under the bridge, and we have an album here that perhaps reflects some of that. Let's get the old band back together, and here they are, older, not necessarily wiser.
Indeed.
But this is a decent collection of songs from a group of guys that are clearly looking back on what was and what could have been, and it's quite an honest appraisal of their career. In some of these songs, there are clearly references back to the fights, the fallouts, the drugs, certainly.
Yes.
But overall, and I hate to bring out my cliche so early on, it's a solid album. It's a solid album about a solid band that are just about back on solid ground.
There's lots of solids going on there.
Yeah, lots of solids. How about yourself?
Well, I was never a fan to start off with, so I was never really swept along by the
Neither was I.
the original
No.
thing that happened. Although I do know people that were friends that were.
Absolutely. They were a phenomenon.
Yeah, and the whole kind of shtick didn't really do it for me at all. I was sort of a bit kind of hackneyed.
Even hackneyed.
Yeah. So the chance to have another album by them didn't fill me with great joy. I'll be honest. However, you are right. It's essentially they've produced a solid, okay record. You know, it's better than a lot of what's out there at the moment.
Yeah.
Shortness of the songs definitely works to its advantage. However, they still want to be the Clash. You know, Gunga Din, Heart of the Matter, Fury, whatever it's called. A very much kind of Clash-esque type of things. Title track is a quite a good pulp song.
Yes. Yes. One of the old ones.
Yeah. Barbarians has hints of the Jam, kind of that's entertainment going on about it. Glasgow Coma, Scale
Blues.
Yeah, which is quite fun, but again, it's kind of Iggy Stooges kind of thing. Yeah. So there's lots of kind of, borrowings from other people wrapped up. But it's, as you say, it's fine. It's quite a short record. You put it on, you don't kind of clamour to switch it off particularly, but by the same token, I'm not sure I would clamour to put it on in the first place.
Yeah.
Having listened to it 3 times.
I think you and I have been passed by this probably 12 years ago. I think the kids, who are now obviously are millennials that are now sort of heading into their late 20s, early 30s, will like this because it's a slice of nostalgia. That's it, folks. We're on to early noughties nostalgia now. And the 90s finished.
Yeah. But, it's good that they got back together and buried their various hatchets. So, in that sense.
In that sense, it's great. And in that sense, it's...
Power to them.
I think kind of reflects what I said. It's a shame that they went there in the first place. But I guess, if they hadn't, they wouldn't be the sort of legendary act that they are now.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes, sort of. However,
I'm going for the positives on this podcast.
Yes. Okay. Let's move on to what should theoretically be safer ground, and the second solo album from Craig Finn, lead singer of the Whole Steady, who obviously released our album of the year last year. And so yes. There's that kind of pause.
That brimming enthusiasm.
That kind of pause in the middle there, yeah. And like his first solo album, this is very much a case of a more understated and reflective kind of record that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
We're not aiming kind of anthemic kind of here. It's very much more, more self-contained, kind of less upbeat stories.
Yeah.
But still, the stories are there. You've got stories of cults, drugs, gigs, ex-girlfriends, violence, 9/11, and of course, smattering of religion, as you always get with Craig Finn stuff. He's still an inventive and fascinating lyricist, and I'll get to a couple of examples of that in a minute. But I think musically, for me at least, it was too often a bit one note for my liking. And if I'm honest, it was hard not to long for kind of had Coupler coming in there with a kind of riff to kind of just lift the whole thing up a level or two. However, there is good stuff on it. The opener, Maggie, I've been searching for our son, which deals with cults and kind of basically searching for yourself, I suppose, to a certain extent, something to believe in, is a really good song. Sarah Calling from a Hotel, which is a kind of, again, nicely painted story that kind of just gives like an outline of something and allows you to kind of fill in what you think's happening in the story.
That's
you know,
dark.
yeah. It's a bit, but essentially it's about an ex phoning out of the blue, but who seems a bit messed up. And there's a kind of possible reference to actually back to Chips Ahoy for the Whole Steady in the start of this, because it says, hadn't seen her since the races at the ending of last summer, watched the horses run up to one another and she looked pretty. So it's kind of like, you could always imagine her being the same person he's talking about in Chips Ahoy. And then it obviously ends with that kind of like bleak, and the last thing she said to me before she hung up was, here he comes, he's got a gun or wherever, I've got to go. So it is a kind of, as you say, a very kind of bleak song. But the best track for me is probably Neumaier's Roof, which is kind of rumination on kind of fame juxtaposed against the whole 9/11 thing, with Doubting Thomas as a central character lyrically, which I quite liked. And unusually, perhaps for Finn as well, it's the one song that actually has an element of him in it and truth about it. So you get the line, all these tall tales and one tiny truth, I saw the towers go down from upon Neumaier's roof, which is actually true, because he actually did. He had moved to New York literally a couple of weeks before it happened, and he actually did do that. So that's the kind of one element of truth in the kind of thing.
Right.
So those, I think, were the high points of the album. Rest of it's not bad per se, but like I said, it was just a bit too kind of one-notey, and I just needed some more oomph, for want of a better word.
I enjoyed this album on repeated listen. I know exactly what you're saying in terms of, for fans of the Hold Steady, you really want the guitar and the band to kick in at some point. You're like, oh, no, it's not coming.
Yeah.
It is a little bit one note. Hold Steady Light is probably cruel in it.
Yeah, it is. I think that would be cruel. Yes.
Yeah, that would be cruel. But it's certainly a more diluted version.
And it reflects clearly that Craig Finn isn't the Homesteady, and the fact that it is a band, and that the band provide most of the music, and he does the lyrics when they're doing the Homesteady thing.
Absolutely, that really comes across on this record, and you really get an appreciation for his storytelling capabilities. Because when you actually, you miss the band, but when you strip the band away and you just have the lyrics, you realise what an absolute brilliant storyteller he can be.
Yes.
And we didn't review the first solo album.
No, we didn't.
But I actually found this as enjoyable as a whole steady record, lyrically speaking.
Yeah.
I always feel, and I've certainly felt this last year with the whole steady album, I always feel we kind of judge these albums against perhaps a lesser class of music. Without giving the end away, this is probably my favourite album of the podcast, and it's not by default, although in this case it might be. I always feel that with the whole steady that we kind of, and I've felt this a few records now. You always on the cusp of greatness.
Yeah,
I think the whole steady, they are going to be one of those bands that are always on the cusp of greatness, and
without really being embraced.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and I think we've been saying this now between ourselves for about 10 years, and this album sort of exemplifies that. Favourite track for me? Well, you've mentioned New Mars Roof and Sarah Calling from a Hotel, which is brilliant. Obviously, St. Peter Upside Down for his religious imagery. He really does have a great turn of phrase, and reminded me why we voted their the last band album, best album of last year.
So, we move on to.
I say I'm done. I've told you the ending.
Extra spoiler alert. Yeah. We move on to Pink Floyd, although not Pink Floyd.
No,
we move on to the fourth solo album from David Gilmour, but the first since the. Definitely Pink Floyd, and definitely not doing any other albums ever again. Thing off the back of. Oh,
come on, David! Get the Gilmour Waters album out. Come on.
Exactly. Off the back of Endless River, which we did last year, which was the mostly acoustic tribute, I suppose, really to Richard Wright. So, yes, rattle that lock. Did it rattle your chain?
Again, repeated listenings, I enjoyed this more than I initially did. 5am, the instrumental that opens it, is classic Pink Floyd. Gilmour's all over that, isn't he?
Absolutely, yeah.
It
is the kind of thing that you just, you kind of wake up in the morning and just kind of go, okay, instrumental.
Yes.
Go back to bed.
Yes. That was, what I found... I'll focus on the criticism first because I'm a cynic. What I found with this was the diversity of the album was a problem for me.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't consistent. And at one point, I think it's The Girl in the Yellow Dress or Today, it verged into Sting territory. If you know what I mean.
Yes.
It had a real feel of the sort of middle of the roadness that I think sort of...
I mean, our friend Sting, who's that last album we loved.
Yeah, but it just reminded me of that last album that we loved, but I didn't want it to because it's David Gilmour. I didn't want to be reminded of Sting at this point. And I think there's a kind of a diversity within the album which I think worked against it. And I can see what he's going for here. He's sort of plodding. No, that's terrible. He's sort of working through the different styles. He's got a few ideas he tries out here, and some of them are hits and some of them are misses. And for me, when you heard him veer off into something that you wouldn't quite expect from David Gilmour or Pink Floyd, it just sort of took me out of the moment.
Yeah. No, I can understand. What you're saying. Yeah. I was going to say I quite enjoyed this record, and as I say, it's one of those records that's enjoyable enough without really ever reaching the point where it's going to overexcite you particularly.
No, it didn't.
Which again, as I say, it's not to say there's not stuff to like. As you say, it opens well. 5am instrumental, as I say, is lovely, and it goes into Round That Lock, This is a lovely slice of kind of adult rock. I said it's almost like he's channeling. I think I said this before. It's almost like he's channeling kind of a Lindsey Buckingham of kind of Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah,
almost.
Yeah.
And you can see why it's been a favourite on the Radio 2 playlist for the last
absolutely
2 months. You know, it kind of ticks all that kind of boxes and that. Elsewhere on the record, funny enough, I liked Today. Which I thought was a good, I actually thought was a good pop track.
Yeah.
I mean, I think The Girl in the Yellow Dress is the one where it gets a bit kind of it's kind of bluesy, kind of jazzy type thing going on. I think Jules Holland's on that track actually.
Oh right.
But squeeze. And I think the instrumental that ends it, and then I think is the best instrumental on the album.
Yes.
The best track on the album for me, though, funny enough, is probably the one I would say is the most Pink Floyd on it, which is In Any Tongue.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
Which for me just sounds...
Yeah.
It could have gone on any of the last couple of Pink Floyd records.
I particularly liked A Boat Lies Waiting.
Yes, lovely track.
Yeah. For kind of, I had a similar thought process with that track. I thought this fell off the last Pink Floyd album, you know.
I fell off a boat.
Yeah, indeed. Well, didn't that album have a boat on it on the front cover?
It wouldn't surprise me. They have used boat imagery before.
Exactly. So that felt very Floydian.
Floydian, I like it.
Yeah.
Floydian,
very
good.
See? Yeah.
You heard it here
I'm
first.
not just a pretty face.
Yes. So speaking of
pretty
old and old things, we come to
old effers.
Yeah, we come to Keith.
Yeah.
Who I believe is celebrating his 76th, something like that, birthday this year.
Good on you.
This is surprisingly only his third solo album, because he is one of those people that basically his band is the Rolling Stones, and he can't, and he can't really think of doing anything other than just writing Rolling Stones stuff, generally speaking. So he's stayed away from doing solo stuff, and you know, this is one of these records that you kind of put it on, and you kind of go, oh fuck no. Keith Richards album, and you get to the end and you kind of think, actually this is probably better than most things the Stones have put out in the last 25 years, really.
Yeah.
Some might say that's not difficult if they're being really cruel. I mean, however, you know, it kind of kicks off exactly, if you didn't know what to expect, it kind of kicks off with probably exactly what you would expect. So you start with the kind of old school bluesy acoustic kind of thing. You think, oh yeah, this is the kind of thing it's gonna be an album full of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It ends with a kind of funny line, okay, that's all I've got, kind of thing. And it does come back to that kind of blues feel later on with Blues in the Morning, which is more of a kind of foot tapping boogie woogie type blues thing, but very good. However, it's actually a surprisingly enjoyable album. Clearly, you've got stuff that is very Stones reminiscent, as you'd expect from a man who provides the music for the Stones. So tracks like Heartstopper, Amnesia, and then particularly some of the better tracks on the album. So Trouble, which is the single, Something for Nothing, and Nothing on Me are amongst the best Stones songs that the Stones haven't recorded in the last 25 years. You also get his love of reggae coming in, so there's a quite authentic cover of Gregory Isaacs' Love Overdue, some bit of kind of blaxploitation kind of funk going on in Substantial Damage. And there's also at times there are almost kind of early kind of Dire Straits kind of elements because his vocal kind of delivery is kind of somewhere between kind of Willie Nelson and Mark Knopfler.
It's kind of Knopfler.
Yeah, it's kind of that kind of husky kind of thing going on with just a little bit of grit.
Yeah.
And also there's quite a nice duet with Norah Jones.
Yeah, that's one of the standout tracks.
Illusion, which comes at the end of the album. So it's one of those records that you kind of you'd possibly put on thinking, oh Christ, I really have to get through our album listening to this. But you come out at the end thinking, actually, it's not a bad record, and there's been a hell of a lot worse records released this year.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I was a little bit anticipatory about this one. I was a little bit, okay, here we go. And actually, I enjoyed it far more than I thought I would. I mean, you mentioned the sort of the riffing on the Rolling Stones. I mean, Something for Nothing practically has the Satisfaction guitar riff in there, you know, which is...
We'll let him off that.
We'll let him off for that, because, you know, obvious reasons. No, it's again, a bit like the previous album we talked about. It's around the diversity, and I feel that it's 15 tracks. All right, it's not the longest album of this podcast, but right, we'll get to that.
Yeah, by some distance, yeah.
This podcast history, but at the same time, I just thought that a little bit of sharpening, a little bit of
yeah, you're right. I mean, it is very, very. I mean, to be fair to him, he hasn't just kind of churned out 15 of the same.
No, he hasn't churned out 15 of the same. I think there's a classic album in here, minus a couple of tracks. But I'm nitpicking. You know what? I can't get no satisfaction, but it's all right. It's a good album.
So, speaking of long albums,
is this a record? This next one? I mean,
it's just a record.
It's Bum Tish.
Yes. But here all week.
Thank you very much. Is it a record though? Is this the longest album we've ever done?
It might be, but it made me doubly glad that I didn't put the Iron Maiden album on, which I was going to do originally, because that's also apparently an hour and a half long.
Oh crikey!
So
glad you didn't do that.
would have been really shafted.
Anyway, the bullet on that one.
Yeah, so this is Dame Funk, Invite the Light, and as you may have gathered, this is an album that lasts for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And just generally, as a rule, people, we don't like albums that last an hour and a half. Seriously, it doesn't matter how good your record is.
It's not that good.
It's just... You giving it away, Pete? You're meant to be telling me so. So apparently Pete doesn't think they're good. Explain, Pete.
It's just too long. It's just too long. It goes on for too damn long. This is great. This is a great funk album. I really enjoyed elements of this album for the first 45 minutes.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you end this album round about track 9, possibly pushing it to track 10, Missing You.
Yeah, Missing
Not
You.
bad.
Yeah, include it. But that second, that final third, or even half, it just goes on. It just goes on too long. And what I found about this album was it was really enjoyable to begin with, but I just lost interest. I'll be honest with you.
Well, yeah.
I'll say it as it is. I was bored by the end of this album, and I like funk. I like a funk album, but this just bored me because I don't know. It's just too long.
It is too long. You're right. I mean, like I said, I think
there's some great stuff on here.
Yeah, I mean the start of the album is great.
Absolutely.
If you're into
really
kind of
strong
if you're into old school kind of funk, Rick James cameo, even Prince, Stevie Wonder, stuff like that. The first bit of this record is
awesome.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you got the sleek introduction bit, but then you get we continue. Somewhere Someday. I'm just trying to survive the city. Is just really good. Lyrical, dancey.
Maybe I was drinking or smoking the wrong thing, but I just.
Well, funny enough, Snoop Dogg is on here.
Yeah, well, exactly. By the time he turns up, I'm just like, is that? Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. We do have on. I'm trying to remember which track it is actually. Flea. Mm-hmm. Flea is on. Floating on Air.
Ah.
The first of 2 Red Hot Chili Peppers to be mentioned in this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a really big kind of... It's not quite instrumental, because there's there, but it's, again, you can tell the kind of really fuzzy bass going on and the whole kind of thing.
I love a bit of Flea.
Really good. I really like that. Good fun.
Yeah.
And the Hunt and Murder of Lucifer I really like as well.
Which I enjoyed. Yeah.
Another great instrumental bit. So yeah, as I said, it's an interesting record, and obviously because I have to do the ping bit. Mr. Funk did spend 4 months of this year basically acting as the band for Mr. Rundgren.
Ping.
On his global tour.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yes, it smacked of Rundgren in places.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, no, look, great funk album. Just too damn long.
Yeah. Damn funk.
How many times did you listen to it?
I actually did listen to it 3 times.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Give that man a medal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I managed a couple of times on this one.
I only listened to it straight through once, though, of those times. The other 2 times I had to break it up.
It was a bit of a podcasting challenge, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we finish with a biggie, the 14th album, or studio album, should I say, from Birmingham's finest.
Black Sabbath.
I was going to say, you said Black Sabbath. Duran.
Duran, they're back.
Are back.
Oh, marvellous.
With Paper Gods.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so they are back. What do I say? Okay, let's start off on a positive. This is the best Duran Duran album probably since 1993's kind of self-titled wedding album
Yeah.
one. Again, a bit like saying earlier on with the Rolling Stones reference, this is perhaps not as big a compliment as it sounds because they've released a few stinkers in
recent years.
that time.
Yeah.
Particularly anyone that owns the Red Carpet Massacre album will know this. It is truly, truly woeful. So this album we have Nile Rodgers, Mr. Hudson, who's responsible for most of the production, Mark Ronson, all helping out on writing.
Yeah.
We have Keza, Lindsay Lohan, Janelle Monáe adding welcome female vocals,
Yeah.
and Red Hot Chili Peppers, John Frusciante adding some guitar
Yeah.
into it as well. And, you know, it's an okay record. You know, it's at its best, it's reasonably enjoyable. Title track borrows its vocal melody from Squeeze's Cool for Cats,
Yeah.
whilst clearly musically revisiting classic kind of Duran and a touch of Depeche Mode in there as well, I kind of
There is
thought.
a touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The single Pressure Off is probably as good a thing as they've released since their heyday, frankly. The addition of Ronson and Rogers' influence on there works well, as it does on the other track that they help out on, Only in Dreams, which also is another good track. Butterfly Girl isn't far behind those as a standout track on the record for me. And What Are the Chances, probably also worth a mention. Rest is a mixed bag, you know, mixture of old kind of Duran Duran, trying to blend it in with today's sound. So the song with Keisha, yeah, last night in the city, you know, starts off kind of like Duran Duran-y and then has a kind of modern cliched chorus. And frankly, the less said about Danceophobia, the better.
Lindsay Lohan.
That's probably the best bit about that track, actually. Lindsay Lohan's vocals. If people really want to know what it sounds like, imagine Eurovision and Nil Point.
Yeah, it's a classic Eurovision stinker.
So, overall, welcome back, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, it's a okay record.
I agree. It again improves on repeated listen. This has got to be their best album for about 30 years, and I know that's not hard.
Yeah, it's not hard.
With the exception of An Ordinary World, there's some really good songs on here, and I particularly enjoyed Paper Gods at the start.
Yeah.
That sort of reflection on fame and what. And it was either You Kill Me With Silence or Pressure Off with Nile Rodgers that I really got a Pet Shop Boys vibe thing. And you mentioned Depeche Mode, of course. Only in Dreams and The Universe Alone. The Universe Alone is actually a really nice tune.
The Universe Alone is not bad, actually. It's a grower, definitely.
It's a grower. In terms of how you close it out, I love bands that close albums properly. I always have.
Well, they throw kind of orchestra and
They
shit on
they
it.
throw it all in
Yeah.
there, you know. Big one to finish on, big soft one, you know. And that certainly ticks my box. Other tunes on here: Danceophobia, okay. Sunset Garage, yeah, good. And obviously Nile Rodgers and Daft Punk have so much to answer for. Some of it good, some of it not so good. But
Indeed.
actually, I think we're back on the positive slate. So the positive side of the balance with the Daft Punk album influenced 2 years later with this one. This is Nile Rodgers at his, I won't say best, but at his better.
Yeah, he definitely what he adds
Definitely.
is good,
Yeah,
rather than just show up.
You get a shade of You to a Kill, which is no bad thing. See what I did there?
Yeah.
That Bond theme sucks. You know the one I'm talking about. Yeah, that one. Yeah, you know the one.
Let's just freak people out with this thing. We won't be reviewing that next podcast.
No, we won't.
But what will you be reviewing next podcast? I hear you scream. Well, churches. Every eye
Oh,
open.
they're back, are they?
They are indeed.
Oh, marvellous.
As our new order with music complete.
Oh, I've heard of them.
Janet Jackson, yes, really.
Really?
Unbreakable. Apparently that has 19 tracks on it, so I'm already looking forward to that one.
You do this to try.
Yeah. John Grant is back.
Oh, God bless
No.
you, sir.
You know, this could be painful
This
because
is a difficult third album, isn't it?
as listeners will know, not only did John Grant succeed in being our album of the year a couple of years ago, but he also succeeded in being our album of
the
podcast
history. Yeah.
5 years worth earlier on this year as well.
He's
for his
got
last
a mountain
album.
to climb there.
He has got a mountain to climb. We have latest album from kind of sort of death metal band, I suppose. Death Haven, New Bermuda, and the 1989 off between Taylor Swift and Ryan Adams. For those who are familiar, Mr. Adams basically decided to re-record the whole of Taylor Swift's 1989 album.
Yeah.
And so, for a laugh,
Yeah.
we shall contrast and compare.
Are we doing Ryan? We're doing Ryan. Are we doing both?
We're doing both.
Are we?
Yeah.
Is she on...
No.
No? Okay,
No.
that's going to be a challenge. Excellent. I like a challenge.
Until next time, though.
All right, good. See you then.
You've been listening to the CTTV Music Podcast.